Welcome to the Journey Church Online. We're in the middle of a series going through the Beatitudes, and this week we're talking about mercy. So naturally, we're going to talk about water pressure and dams. Wondering how any of that relates to what Jesus said about mercy? Stick around and find out. Well, I've mentioned this before, but the Beatitudes seem to be like a passage of scripture that most people either don't really understand or they just skip over this part altogether. And as we've been working through these verses in this series, we've really tried to help you get a concrete understanding of each one of the Beatitudes. After all, Jesus said that our main mission as disciples is to help other people learn what he taught and then actually help each other do what he taught. And one of the ways we do this is by connecting the things that Jesus says with some real life examples. Sometimes it's a thing like a GPS, or like a couple weeks ago, a seismograph. Other times it might be taking you to a place like a cemetery or a grocery store, or someplace cool like this today. Well, it's really cool how God seems to orchestrate our travels to be in the perfect place for the thing that we want to teach about each week. And this week, we have been really blessed. We've been able to spend some awesome time on two of Idaho's world-famous rivers, the mighty Snake River and the rugged and wild Salmon River. Spending time camping next to these rivers and exploring them has been amazing. And believe it or not, they actually provide a great picture for us to understand what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 7. He says this, "God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy." And before we get to understanding mercy, I want you to really appreciate the power and beauty of these rivers and the way that the water flows and carves away at everything in its path. So sit back, relax, and just take in the amazing Salmon River and Snake River for just a couple minutes.
Open up the heavens, come rain down your presence. Jesus, come, inhabit the praise of the sinner and saint. Jesus, come, and Jesus, move. Here and now, we call on you, Lord, come and meet us today. Here and now, have your way. Open up the heavens, come rain down your presence.
Well, today we're here at a place called Brownlee Reservoir on the Snake River. And this is essentially a large lake that's been created as the water backs up behind the Brownlee Dam that you can see right here behind us. And you probably didn't know it, but dams are actually a great picture of mercy. Well, we brought you here for two important reasons. Number one, we want you to understand what Jesus said about mercy. And number two, we want you to know how to be merciful. If you're missing either of these elements, then you're not really a disciple of Jesus. If you want to know what Jesus said, but really you're not sure what he meant, or maybe you just get it, but you're not really applying it on purpose in your everyday life, then you just know some stuff that Jesus said. And here's the thing, knowing things that Jesus said does not make you a disciple. And it's actually something that is at the heart of a huge problem with the way people in North America approach Christianity. There's so much emphasis on education in our Western world, this priority to learn things, to take classes, to pass tests, to acquire knowledge, that unfortunately people kind of get tricked into believing that being a disciple of Jesus is about knowing all the stuff. But knowing stuff, even the right stuff, doesn't make you a disciple of Jesus in and of itself. But what if you're out there doing some pretty good things, doing some things that sort of look like and seem like things Jesus would do as you live your everyday life and the way you treat other people? While that might sound nice, that's actually also not really a disciple, and here's why. It has everything to do with your motives. When you don't know what Jesus teaches, then obviously that's not going to be behind why you're doing the things you're doing for people. So if obeying Jesus isn't motivating you, what is? So your motives may be pure here and there from time to time, but I think over the long haul, what you're going to learn, all of us learn about ourselves, is that you're motivated by what feels good to you, what you can get out of it, how others will think about you, or how you can improve your reputation. That's all fine and dandy if the goal is to make fans and followers of you. But if you want to be a disciple of Jesus that points others to Jesus, this method doesn't really work. Before we can take a closer look at the dam, I want to show you a little device, something we use in our RV life. It's called a water pressure regulator. And you may be shocked, hold on, wait for it, to learn what it does. It regulates, dun dun dun, water pressure. Water comes in one side of it at full pressure, and then you adjust a small screw on the other end to change the amount of pressure that comes out the other side. It's a pretty simple device. Now, a giant dam like the one that you see behind us is really just a much larger, much more complex thing, but it's essentially the same thing, just a giant water pressure regulator. There's all these controls inside where operators can regulate the amount of water that goes through to the turbines, and that's how they make electricity. They can control how much water goes over the spillway. They can even control how much water goes through the fish ladders on different dams. So what does any of this have to do with what Jesus says in Matthew 5, verse 7? I'm glad you asked, because of course you were all asking, right? Of course you were. First of all, let's take a look at what he said. He says, God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. And to really make sense of this statement, it's pretty critical that you understand mercy. After all, it sure seems like the people who really understand it and practice it are good in God's eyes. It says he blesses them. And beyond that, he makes this really great promise that they're going to actually be shown mercy in return. So let's talk mercy. First of all, you need to know that mercy is different than grace. Grace can be extended to anyone from anyone. Grace is when you give someone something that they didn't earn or deserve. God extends His saving grace to every person, offering to forgive their sins without any work on their part. Any person can extend grace to another person. If somebody's rude to you at work or generally just not nice to you in some way, you can choose to give that person grace, to give them things that they didn't earn or deserve. In a simple case, it might be as easy as just smiling at that person when they walk by. Or maybe you go out of your way to bring them back their favorite coffee or help them with something that they need even though they didn't ask for it and certainly didn't earn it or deserve it based on the way they treated you. You're giving someone something good that they didn't earn or deserve. Grace is not a reward for good behavior. Instead, it's a way of showing love and kindness in spite of a person's behavior. Grace is all about showing people what our God is like. So if that's grace, then what is mercy? Because I think a lot of times people get those two confused and think maybe they're almost the same thing. Let's talk about mercy. Mercy is different from grace because not everybody is in a position to extend mercy to someone else. Mercy has everything to do with a person being in a position of power or authority, and then that person can choose the appropriate response for people based on what they kind of deserve for what they did or said, maybe. So the easiest way, I think, to understand mercy is to picture a judge in a courtroom. Day after day, people are brought before the judge, and the people that are brought there are people that broke laws or committed crimes, and so the judge does what a judge does, right? They review the case, they take into account the circumstances, the character of the person, and then the judge looks over the possible sentences that a person could be given. So, for example, a judge would have a range of punishments that they could choose from. Maybe something along the lines of, on this hand, they could go all the way down to just community service for one crime, then they could go all the way up to months or even years in jail for the same crime. And a good judge does their best to consider all the factors and assign a fair punishment. As most of you know from different TV shows or maybe even personal experience, some judges get a reputation as being really harsh, while others get a reputation as being more lenient or easier. And so when a judge could assign a bigger or more difficult or harsh punishment, but chooses not to, and instead offers the person a much lighter punishment, that is an act of mercy. The judge is in a position with the authority to give the stricter punishment. And it could even be harsh and still be within the law. But instead, the judge acts mercifully. While most of you are probably not judges, and I think it's safe to say that none of you are dams, all of you are in a position of authority in different areas of your life at different times. Some of you might have authority over your children, and others might have authority over maybe employees. Even teenagers have authority over, say, the younger kids that they babysit, or maybe younger siblings that they're in charge of at different times. Everyone has authority over others at different times in your life. And so, as a person with authority, you can either be fair or harsh, or you can be merciful to others around you when they make mistakes or act badly. And based on what Jesus says, He seems to favor the people who are merciful to others. So this week, as you go on about your life, I want you to think about the people that you have some level of authority over. And then I want you to think about how you can respond when they mess up or blatantly treat you badly, or break rules, or lie, or steal, or, fill in the blank. You're not going to have any problem thinking about what people do wrong or noticing when they do. That's something that comes really natural to those of us in authority. What doesn't come naturally is pausing and thinking about what would be a merciful response. I want you to start thinking of yourself like the operator in the dam. The person that offended you or did something wrong, they might actually deserve a flood of water to the face, right? But what consequences will that have? What will happen to the other people around them if they actually get what they deserve or if you respond really harshly? And most importantly, what will it teach that person and the others watching about God? Well, now that you have a better idea of what mercy is, I pray you have opportunities to practice it this week. Ways where you can really walk out your faith as a true disciple of Jesus. Somebody who is learning what he teaches and doing what he taught. That's a disciple of Jesus. Well, we're here for several more days, and I am for sure hoping to go catch a bunch of fish. This place is world renowned for smallmouth bass, and I'm going to practice mercifully throwing them back. All right, admittedly, I don't know if that's the best example, but you get the idea. Thanks for tuning in this week, and we'll see you next week from wherever we are out there.